20 травня починає роботу.
It's May 20, Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheparenko. And now we will be talking about the fire safety for citizens during power shutdowns. Joining us in the studio is Anatoliy Shkarbuta, Deputy Head of the Prevention Unit of the Fire Safety Office of the Emergencies Prevention Department of the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Good morning, Mr. Anatoliy. Good morning. So the power shutdown started due to more active strikes of the enemy on our power grid. It becomes their mission number one for them. For us, it's not the first time. Ukrainians are somewhat prepared. However, we document the fires related to the fact that people start using additional devices, additional appliances for heating up their food, for heating up their homes. So do you have any statistics about the number of fires which resulted from this factor? Well, really, with the beginning of such a period when enemy intensified their strikes on critical infrastructure and power infrastructure facilities, so during this period the number of fires has grown. People started using auxiliary power sources and generators, and in residential areas, for example, we've documented more than 8,500 fires starting from the beginning of the year. The losses from and damage from those fires is more than 4 billion hryvnia. About 500 people were injured, including unfortunately 38 children. In total, with the beginning of the year, without taking into account the residential areas, we've documented about 26,000 fires. The biggest fires are registered due to a number of reasons, and one of the key reasons is the violation of rules of operation of heating appliances and equipment. Well, in the eve of the potential power shutdowns, people better get prepared, of course. Our people are experienced. The blackouts of the year 22 let the people get certain experience. People have power banks, other auxiliary power sources, electric generators, charge stations. And this is why when the power is being shut down, the number of fires resulting from those sources is increasing. Well, first of all, under the conditions of blackout, the State Emergency Service suggests getting prepared for such cases. We advise the citizens to inspect the available auxiliary electric power sources. Also, we suggest prepare some provisions of food and water both potable and technical, and please be ready to crisis situations. Keep track on the information about the resilience stations that were additionally deployed all across Ukraine. So first of all, please pay most attention to the electric power sources such as power generators and power banks. First of all, we suggest procuring certified products. They are way safer, and also please get familiarized with the instructions on proper operation of power banks and electric power generators, and please adhere to all of the rules as prescribed by the instructions. That may result in significant decrease of all those fires resulting from auxiliary power sources. Well, talking about the generators, you know, those businesses, those people who bought them during previous blackouts, they were staying idle within a year and a half. So do they require any additional cleaning maintenance in order to maintain their safe and secure operations? Well, really, thanks to the efforts of our armed forces, the generators were staying idle, but before every season of use you have to resort to the preliminary inspection. If it was not used, if the generator was not used for a long time, it's supposed to be maintained and inspected, which is clearly described by the instruction. That's the normal instruction for operation of every generator. So the instruction describes all of the standards for fueling with diesel, gas, and sometimes people neglect the rules of storage of POL that may also result in fire. This is why the instruction by the manufacturer is the key document that contains the main requirements for the use of equipment. The equipment which is not operating properly, if they were damaged to a certain extent, such pieces of equipment cannot be used safely. Well, I may describe in more detail the power banks and the charging stations which are recommended to be used by the state emergency service, by those who use in the apartments, and the generators are mostly for those who reside in the private residential areas. Well, yeah, right. So let's talk about power banks and the generators and their safe operation right now, both in the apartments and in the residential buildings. Well, once again, the use of diesel and gas generators is not recommended in the apartment blocks. On top of that, the rules of fire safety prohibit doing so. This is very important because back in year 2022 the number of fires has grown significantly, specifically due to those reasons. People who reside in the apartments are recommended to use such auxiliary electric power sources as power banks, charging stations, which are numerous in the market. But again, please use the certified high quality products. Once again, power banks, batteries, charging stations are only supposed to be used in case they don't have any visual damage. If you observe any visual damage, or if you know those appliances, for example, were experiencing a fall, please refrain from using such appliances. And again, please pay close attention to charging of such equipment, because the most of the fires erupt specifically during the process of charging. Again, as you charge your equipment, please make sure there are no flammable materials in its whereabouts. It's prohibited to charge power banks in the bed, under the pillow. We are aware of the cases when people were leaving their power banks in the bed so it stays closed, which resulted in fire. Sometimes the people were covering power banks while charging with blankets or pillows, which increases the temperature and may result in fire again. So please charge your device in a dedicated place where there are no flammable liquids or other flammable substances around it. Talking about the generators that are supposed to be used in the private homes, in the private buildings, well, all those generators are supplied with the instructions that clearly describe the procedure for operation. For example, please install them at the distance of 5 to 7 meters from the buildings outside, against a blunt wall, without windows, without doors. And also please make sure that your generator is covered so it's protected against rain or snowfall. Also, the generator is supposed to be fueled as soon as it cools down, and please store the POL in the dedicated cabinet away from the operating generator. In no case the citizens are allowed to operate the generators in closed facilities. It's prohibited to use them inside of the apartments, inside of the buildings. We are aware of the cases when the whole families were dying because of installation of a generator in their living rooms. The choking gas, it doesn't mercy anybody. Even the children die as a result of improper use of the generator. Yet another question: during the power shutdowns and when the power goes back on, there is the leap of voltage and the appliances go out of order. How to protect the equipment, the devices against such breakdowns? Well, yes, such cases do happen, and our recommendation is, as soon as the power is being shut down, please switch off all of the appliances from the sockets, because the most dangerous period is when the power goes back on and the appliances with high energy capacity tend to have overloads, which may result in fires. So this is why when the power goes off, please make sure to switch off all of the electric appliances. Our recommendation is to leave one light bulb on, so it signals about the power going back on. That would be sufficient to protect yourself against such unpleasant cases when there are fluctuations of voltage in the grid. Also, when the generator is starting, please connect other appliances to it after it starts, but it's important to make sure that the capacity of the generator is way above the consumption rate of those appliances which are being connected. It's important not to overload the generator and to avoid the power fluctuation, voltage fluctuation in the grid. Well, the candles is an obsolete way of lighting, but the elderly people continue using them, and sometimes it results in fires too. So can you please give us the statistics? Is it true that the number of fires has decreased resulting from the candles? Well, that's true, but really the elderly, the pensioners who unfortunately cannot afford buying electric power generators, or they are not being taken care of by their children, their grandchildren, they still use the open fire sources such as candles and other similar devices. Sometimes they use cotton strip and oil, so they make self-made candles, and the biggest problem is that they leave such candles or gas burners unattended. And this is exactly the reason the fires happen, and unfortunately sometimes the elderly people die as a result of such fires. So please pay close attention to the open fire sources, specifically when there are children around. Unfortunately, the fire draws the attention not only of the adults but also of the kids. It's always interesting for them. It's interesting for them to touch it, to carry it somewhere, to light another fire from the existing ones. So we, as a state emergency service, would like to urge everybody to take care of the elderly and not let the children play with fire. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on the floor? Good morning, Olena Litvinenko. Mr. Anatoliy, can you please tell us whether the resilience stations continue operating during spring and summer period, and if so, what are the services that the citizens can take advantage of there? Well, the state expands the network of the resilience stations currently, and in critical situations when people are unable to get such services at home, they are suggested to come to the resilience stations deployed by the local government, central government, state emergency service, national police. the businesses also deploy such locations in supermarkets, gas stations, and people need to remember about them. Also, please have the information about the resilience stations prepared beforehand. Such information can be obtained from the DIA portal. There is a map with the resilience stations, so you can check where is the closest one to you. And in crisis situations, please come to the resilience stations. For example, the ones deployed by the State Emergency Service are more than 700 all across Ukraine. And we are ready to deploy additional ones, either tent-based or vehicle-based. We have additional resilience stations that we are ready to deploy to ensure proper support of the population. Well, currently, so what is the number of these resilience stations? 730 are currently in operation. The need is identified by the local governments, and we have more provisional ones, more than 700 reserve resilience stations. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions on the floor? Well, now that we do not, we would like to thank Mr. Anatoliy. Let me remind you, we were talking about the fire safety for citizens during power shutdowns, and Ukraine Media Center will be back on air at 1300, and we will have the presentation of the report Ukrainian Peace Plan as a basis for preserving the global world order. Stay tuned.